Okay, this is one more video that the student asked for as far as review for the final. So this one's on pre and post conditions. So in this example, you can see I have some code there where I'm going to define a function in line 3 called f. F is going to take a and b. And I want this to be such that a is going to be a list, which you see in line 9. B then is just going to be some scalar or some integer we're going to use to multiply by every element of a, and then return a new list that has the same, that's the members of A multiplied by B, basically, okay? So that's the idea. So you see in the main, I'm creating my list, and I'm then creating R, which is going to be the return list that is going to be A with all of its elements multiplied by 5, okay? So the point of this example is to talk about preconditions and postconditions. Okay, so the preconditions, it's the assumptions we are making about A and B, okay? So in this case, we know that A is a list, and we know that B is an integer. Okay, so I can test those, okay? I can say if not is instance, okay, of a list, then we can return, I would just return, express a list, so return a list of 0, just has 0 there, or just an empty list probably would work, should be okay. Then I can do another, if not is instance, B int, then again, I'm going to return an empty list. Okay, and that is, it looks like a little rectangle, but that is an open and closed bracket, square bracket. Okay, so I'm not making any other assumptions. If I was making an assumption that B was greater than 0 or whatever, I'd have to do a similar kind of a thing here. Okay, so this is going to say, to read this the positive way, if is instance A is, so if A is a list, it's going to ignore that. If B is an int, it's going to ignore that. Okay, then we have to actually go through and do those calculations. Okay, so I've got a couple of options here. If I wanted to start with X being equal to A, I could do that. I could do the following. I could do this bracket, one bracket, bracket, colon, bracket. Okay, that, make sure there's a note there that this is going to make a copy, make a real copy of A. Okay, so now we have X for the same thing. So now I can just go through and change each of the values. Okay, so I can say something like, let's see, do I need the indices or not? I probably do. So for this one, I would have to say something like C is equal to 0, and then say while C is less than the length of A. Okay, so that's just going to go through each time. So the first time through, I'm at 0. So I could just set X sub C. C is going to be my one I'm increasing. So the first time, X sub 0 is going to be equal to X sub C times B. And then C is equal to C plus too far, plus 1. That should go through from 1 up to how many, or from 0 up to how many we have, and every time through should multiply that. Okay. If you wanted, you could do the same thing, but you wouldn't have to copy the A first. You could just have X sub C. You'd have to append A sub C. So X dot append A sub C times B. But this works as well. Okay. So that takes care of that as far as the preconditions. Okay. Now on to the postconditions. The postconditions are the assumptions we make about X that we're returning. Okay. Now we haven't been doing this, but we are making the assumption that X is a list also. So it's very possible to do the same thing on the is instance. You could cut and paste that to be thorough. I wouldn't expect you to do that because we haven't really seen that before, but you certainly could. You could just paste that down there like this. Okay. But a more straightforward one, I think, is that we could assert that the length of X should be the same as the length of A. Okay, so we just do assert. I forget the syntax on assert. Do I just put it in here? The length of A is equal to the length of X. Okay. That should do that. So see if this works. We'll talk about our try blocks. Yeah, it does work. It does exactly what I wanted, multiplied all by 5. Okay. So yeah, if for some reason, like say, for example, well, no, because of this, it's going to be the same. So this length should be okay, but it's always worth checking anyway. Okay. As far as the try block here, the things that you want to watch for in particular, we have the assert error, the assertion error, I think it's called. What happens if that is an error? You have to say what's going on, that the length of the new list was not correct. We have an index error possibility because we're using lists. It's all I can see right off. But again, my strategy for the final would be to put everything, put every exception you can find, including a generic one, okay, at the end, okay? Okay, so this was a little bit about lists, a little bit about preconditions and postconditions. As always, let me know if you have any questions.